I never let my son see what was in the basement. When he married her, I changed the lock to a code only I knew. 3 years later, while I was in Denver on business, Connor called me. His voice was shaking. "Dad, she got in. Sienna found the code. She's been down there." I was sitting in a hotel conference room when my phone lit up. The meeting had just ended, papers still scattered across the mahogany table. My son rarely called during work hours. He knew my schedule. Something was very wrong. "What did she see?" I kept my voice steady, though my chest was tight. "Everything. The filing cabinets are open, documents everywhere. Dad, she's furious. She's saying things about you, about Mom." In the background, I could hear her voice, sharp, angry. The polished veneer completely gone. "Don't put her on the phone," I said quickly. "Connor, listen carefully. Is she still down there?" "No, she's upstairs, pacing, going through her phone like she's looking something up or calling someone." I closed my eyes. At 63, I'd learned to recognize when a storm was coming. This wasn't just a storm. This was the hurricane I'd been preparing for since the day Connor brought Sienna Blake home 3 years ago. The moment I met her, I knew. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the lessons life had beaten into me over 6 decades. But I saw right through that practiced smile and those calculated compliments. The way she assessed our Victorian house during that first dinner, her eyes lingering on the antique chandelier, the original hardwood floors, the paintings my wife Kathy had collected. The way she asked pointed questions about my construction business, retirement plans, what would happen to the house someday. Kathy would have seen it too. My wife had always been better at reading people than I was, but Kathy was gone, 15 years in the ground, and Connor had been alone and vulnerable when Sienna found him. "Dad, are you still there?" "I'm here, son. I'm booking the first flight home." I pulled up airline options on my phone. "Sienna's saying you've been hiding things from me, that you don't trust me. Is that true?" The pain in his voice cut deeper than any of Sienna's accusations. After everything I'd done, every sacrifice, every sleepless night protecting what Kathy and I built together, this was what it came to. My own son questioning whether I'd been manipulating him. "Connor, everything I've done has been to protect you. I need you to trust me until I get home. Can you do that?" The silence stretched between us. In that pause, I could hear 35 years of fatherhood hanging in the balance. "Okay," he finally said. "But Dad, she's really angry. I've never seen her like this." Of course she was angry. She'd just discovered that every plan she'd carefully constructed was built on sand. I'd made sure of that the day Connor told me he was going to propose. "I'll be home tonight. Don't let her take anything from that basement. And, Connor, don't sign anything she puts in front of you. Promise me." "I promise." I hung up and immediately started packing. My hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly, but from something deeper. Exhaustion, maybe. The weight of carrying secrets for so long, of being the guardian of a legacy that my son didn't fully understand yet. The basement had been off limits since Connor was a child. When he was young, I told him the stairs were unstable, that there were old chemicals down there. As he got older, the excuse changed. It was my private office space. It was where I kept things that reminded me too much of his mother. None of it was entirely a lie, but none of it was the full truth either. After Kathy died, I'd spent months organizing everything: her clothes, her jewelry, her paintings, but more importantly, the documents. The trust she'd set up with her attorney 6 months before the cancer took her, when she was still clear-headed enough to see the future and plan for it. Kathy had grown up poor, watched her own mother lose everything to a manipulative second husband after her father died. She swore it would never happen to our family. "Promise me, Rob," she'd said one night in the hospital, her hand skeletal in mine. Promise me you'll protect what we built. Not for yourself. For Connor. There are people in this world who will see him as a meal ticket, and he's too kind to see them coming. I'd promised, and I'd spent 15 years keeping that promise. The trust was ironclad. Everything. The house we'd bought in 1992 for $95,000 and restored ourselves, now worth $485,000. The retirement accounts, the life insurance, all of it locked in a trust that only Connor could access. Not his spouse, not his future ex-spouse, just Connor. And now, finally, the moment I'd been dreading and preparing for had arrived. Sienna had opened Pandora's box, and there was no closing it again. The flight felt endless, but my mind went back to that first dinner 3 years ago. Connor had been 32 when he met Sienna at some charity tech event downtown. He'd come over that Sunday glowing, talking about this incredible woman who understood him, who made him laugh. My son was a senior software engineer making $120,000 a year, but he'd spent most of his 20s and early 30s focused on his career. His dating life had been a string of false starts and disappointments. He deserved happiness. He deserved someone genuine. Then I met her. Sienna Blake was beautiful, 28 years old with the kind of polished appearance that comes from expensive salons and carefully chosen clothes. She showed up in a dress that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payment, heels clicking across our hardwood floors, dark hair styled in waves that looked effortless but certainly weren't. "Mr. Mitchell, it's such an honor to finally meet you," she'd said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Connor has told me so much about you and this beautiful home." The way she said home, with just a slight emphasis, was my first warning sign. Throughout dinner, she'd been charming, asked about my business, about Kathy, about how Connor grew up. She laughed at my stories, touched Connor's arm affectionately, complimented everything. But I watched her eyes. They wandered constantly, taking inventory. When she thought no one was looking, she examined the silver candlesticks, the Persian rug, Kathy's paintings. I saw her fingers brush against the marble countertop in the kitchen, assessing, calculating. After she left, Connor had been euphoric. "She's amazing, isn't she, Dad? I think she might be the one." I'd smiled and told him to take his time. Inside, alarm bells were ringing so loud I could barely think straight. That's when I called Frank Morrison. Frank was a retired cop who'd worked fraud cases for 20 years. I'd used him once before to vet a business partner. He was thorough, discreet, and good at his job. "I need everything," I told him. Employment history, previous relationships, financial records, social media. What Frank found made my blood run cold. Sienna Blake had been married twice before. Once at 23 to a 52-year-old dentist in California. Marriage lasted 11 months, ended when she discovered his assets were in a family trust. The second time at 26, but she'd used her mother's maiden name, Rivera, for that marriage to a 45-year-old real estate developer in Arizona. That one lasted 14 months, ended when the prenup held up in court. She had a pattern. Target successful men, preferably older, preferably with assets. Play the devoted partner, push for access to finances. When that failed, move on. "Here's the clever part," Frank had said, sliding a folder across my desk. She told Connor about the first marriage, said she was young and stupid, that the guy was controlling. What she didn't mention was the second one. Connor searched Sienna Blake before proposing, found nothing about Arizona because she used Rivera. Her Instagram account had 18,000 followers, photos of luxury hotels, designer handbags, expensive brunches, all carefully curated to present a lifestyle she couldn't actually afford. Her bio read, "Living my best life, lifestyle, and wellness." Her actual job history told a different story. Bartender for 6 months, personal trainer for 8 months, social media consultant for various small businesses, All contracts that ended after a few months when she failed to deliver results. She'd never held a steady job for more than a year. She'd never built anything. She was a professional consumer, constantly looking for someone else to fund the Instagram life she wanted. And now, she'd found my son. 6 months into their relationship, Sienna started making suggestions. The house could use updating. The kitchen was so dated. She knew a wonderful contractor. Connor mentioned it casually one Sunday. Sienna thinks we should renovate a few rooms. She's got great taste, Dad. She'd already inserted herself into ownership of a house she didn't live in. The house is fine as it is, I'd said carefully. Your mother and I chose every detail together. I saw the flash of irritation cross Connor's face. Dad, it's been 15 years. Don't you think Mom would want the house to feel current? The manipulation was subtle, but effective, using Kathy's memory against me, making me seem unreasonable. When Connor told me he was going to propose, I didn't try to talk him out of it. You can't protect your adult children from their own choices. You can only prepare for the consequences. I'm happy for you, son, I said, hugging him. But I also called Sarah Chen, the estate lawyer who'd helped Kathy set up the trust. I need a prenuptial agreement, I told her. Ironclad, no loopholes. Sarah had been Kathy's friend. She understood immediately. The prenup was positioned as standard practice for families with estates over a certain value. Connor had been embarrassed to ask Sienna to sign it. She'd signed it 3 weeks before the wedding, with her own attorney present to review it. Sarah had insisted on that. No room for claims of coercion. Sienna's attorney had advised her to negotiate, but she'd waved it off. I just want to get married, she'd said with a laugh. She probably thought it was just a formality, that she'd have years to work around it. She was wrong. The wedding cost $47,000. Connor had struggled to pay for it, too proud to ask me for help beyond the $20,000 I'd given as a gift. Sienna had insisted on a venue that seated 200 people, flowers that cost $11,000, a dress that cost $6,500. I'd watched Connor's savings account drain, watched him take on debt for a wedding that was more about Sienna's Instagram feed than their actual marriage. 2 weeks after the honeymoon, Sienna quit her job. I want to focus on building our life together, she'd told Connor. Maybe start my own business. 3 years later, she still hadn't started that business, hadn't held a job, hadn't contributed a single paycheck to their household, but she'd spent plenty. Year 1, the honeymoon facade. 6 months after the wedding, Sienna convinced Connor to co-sign a loan for a BMW 3 Series, $42,000, monthly payments of $695. Connor had been making do with his paid-off Toyota that ran perfectly fine. We need a reliable car for when we start a family, she'd said. They still didn't have kids, but Sienna had her BMW. I watched the credit card statements Connor sometimes left on my kitchen counter when he visited. Sephora, Nordstrom, Whole Foods, SoulCycle. Monthly totals that made my stomach turn. $1,800 one month, $2,100 the next. Connor's stress showed in small ways. He stopped talking about buying a house, stopped mentioning his retirement accounts, started picking up extra projects at work, working 50-hour weeks just to keep up. Year 2, cracks in the mask. The Thanksgiving incident happened in November. Sienna had insisted on hosting at Connor's condo. She'd invited 6 of her friends, women who seemed cut from the same cloth. They'd been drinking wine since noon. I'd arrived at 4 to help Connor with the turkey. I'd stepped outside to grab the folding chairs from the garage. Through the open living room window, I heard them clearly. I mean, once his dad finally kicks it, this house will be ours, Sienna had said. It's worth like $500,000. We could sell it and buy something amazing in the mountains. Her friend had laughed. You're terrible. I'm practical. Connor's too nice to think about these things, but someone has to plan for our future. Connor was in the kitchen, radio playing, oblivious. But I heard every word. That night, I went home and pulled Connor's laptop, the one I'd helped him fix the month before. When I opened Chrome, the browser history synced from Sienna's phone. She'd been logged into his Google account, probably for convenience. I saw everything. Estate trust loopholes, Colorado. How to challenge a prenuptial agreement. Rights of surviving spouse inheritance. Can a trust be contested after death? She'd been researching, planning, for months. Year 3. The end game. In June, Sienna started pushing Connor to buy life insurance on me. "Your dad's getting older," she'd said during a Sunday dinner I wasn't supposed to overhear. "What if something happens? We should make sure he's covered." Connor had mentioned it to me awkwardly. "Sienna thinks we should look into life insurance, just to be safe." "I'm 63, not 90, I'd said. "And I'm not interested in Sienna planning my funeral just yet." In August, she'd asked Connor about my will. Had I updated it recently? What were my wishes for the house? Connor had told her it wasn't her business, and they'd fought about it for days. Then, last month, I'd seen her Instagram post. A photo of Kathy's grave, soft focus and filtered. The caption, "Paying respects to family." She'd visited the cemetery, alone, and from the gravestone, she would have seen the date, March 27th, 1958. The code to the basement had always been Kathy's birthday, 032758. I'd never changed it. It was my way of keeping her close, of remembering her every time I went down there. Sienna must have tried everything first. Connor's birthday, their anniversary, my birthday. And finally, desperately, she'd tried the date from the gravestone. And it had worked. The plane finally landed at 7:43 p.m. I grabbed my carry-on and headed straight to my car. The drive to Boulder took 32 minutes. 32 minutes of rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd handle this. Both their cars were in my driveway when I pulled up. Connor's Toyota and Sienna's BMW, the one he was still making payments on. But there was something else. Through the living room window, I could see Connor standing in the middle of the room, holding something. A notebook. His face was pale, his expression devastated. He'd found something. Something beyond just the basement documents. I sat in my car for a moment. Kathy's voice echoed in my memory. "You're stronger than you think, Rob. Protect our boy." The front door opened. Connor stood there, and when he saw me, his face crumpled with relief and pain. "Dad," he said, "I found her notebook. I know what she's been planning. I know everything." Behind him, Sienna appeared. Her careful composure was gone. Hair mussed, makeup smudged. She looked cornered. Dangerous. "Rob," she said, voice tight, "we need to talk." I stepped inside my own home. "Yes," I said calmly. "I believe we do." We sat in the living room like chess pieces positioned for battle. I took my usual chair, the worn leather recliner that had molded to my shape over decades. Connor sat on the couch, Sienna's leather notebook clutched in his hands like evidence at a trial. Sienna claimed the other end, angling her body toward me, posture rigid. "Let me see that," Sienna said, reaching for the notebook. Connor pulled it back. "No." The single word hung in the air. I'd never heard my son use that tone with her before. "Connor, honey, don't." He opened the notebook, his voice shaking. "House appraisal, $485K. Trust fund, find loophole. Life insurance on Rob, $100K minimum. Connor's 401K, joint beneficiary." He looked up at her. "You wrote this. In your handwriting. This is a business plan. And I'm the product." Sienna's face flushed. "You're taking that out of context. What context makes this okay?" Connor's voice cracked. "What context makes any of this okay?" I watched my son, this gentle, trusting man, finally see the truth. Not because I'd forced it on him, but because he'd discovered it himself. There was power in that. "I was protecting our future," Sienna said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. making sure we'd be taken care of. That's what partners do. Partners don't research how to break prenuptial agreements, I said quietly. I saw your browser history, Sienna. Connor asked me to fix his laptop last month. Everything synced from your phone. Estate trust loopholes. Rights of surviving spouse in Colorado? You've been planning this for over a year. Her eyes went wide, then narrowed. You invaded my privacy? You invaded my basement. I cut her off. You cracked a code to access documents that had nothing to do with you. Documents about a trust my wife, Connor's mother, set up before she died. A trust designed to cut me out, Sienna shot back, to make sure I'd never be a real part of this family. A trust designed to protect Connor from exactly this, from someone who sees him as an ATM instead of a person. Dad, Connor said quietly, still staring at the notebook. There's more. She has notes about selling the house, about moving to Aspen, about, his voice broke, about how long she thinks you'll live. Actuarial tables. She researched your life expectancy. The silence that followed was deafening. Sienna stood abruptly. Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth. I looked at this house and saw opportunity. I looked at your family's money and saw security. Is that a crime? People consider finances when they get married. That's real life, not some fairy tale. There's considering finances, I said. And there's researching how to challenge legal documents designed to protect my son's inheritance. Your son is 35 years old. Sienna's voice went cold. Maybe it's time you stopped protecting him and let him make his own choices. Or is this how it's always going to be? You controlling everything from beyond the grave, just like your precious Kathy? Don't, I said, my voice low. Don't you dare. Oh, I'll dare. She turned on me fully now, mask completely shattered. St. Catherine, perfect Kathy. You want to know what I think? I think she was controlling you from the grave. This house isn't a home. It's a mausoleum. You've spent 15 years worshiping a dead woman, and you've been dragging Connor down with you. I felt my blood pressure spike, felt 35 years of protective instinct surge forward. But Connor spoke first. Stop. His voice was quiet but firm. He stood up, still holding the notebook. Just stop, Sienna. Connor, he's poisoned you against me. No. Connor's hands were shaking. You did this yourself. Dad didn't make you research trust loopholes. Dad didn't make you calculate his life expectancy. Dad didn't make you keep a notebook tracking our family's assets like some kind of accountant planning a hostile takeover. I was planning our future. You were planning my future, Connor said, without me. You want to know what the saddest part is? For 3 years, I defended you. Every time Dad seemed cold, every time he held back, I told myself he was being overprotective, that he couldn't let go, that you were right, he was controlling. He looked at me, eyes red-rimmed. I'm sorry, Dad. You weren't controlling. You were watching, and you saw exactly who she was. Sienna's expression shifted from defensive to furious. So that's it? You're choosing him over me? Your wife? You're not my wife, Connor said quietly. I don't know what you are, but a wife doesn't do this. A wife doesn't measure her husband's value in dollar signs and actuarial tables. Connor, I think you should pack some things and leave. The words hung in the air. Final. Irrevocable. This is still half my home, Sienna said, but her voice wavered. We're married. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I said, the condo is in Connor's name only. He bought it before you met. You have no legal claim to it. She looked between us, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. She'd lost, and she knew it. If I leave now, she said slowly, I'm not coming back. Connor met her eyes. I know. She stared at him for a long moment, searching for any crack in his resolve. Found none. Then she turned to me, and her voice went ice cold. You know what the saddest part is, Rob? I did love him. At first. But loving Connor wasn't enough when I saw what he'd inherit. And that's on you. You made your son's worth about money instead of who he is. You did this. The barb landed. For a split second, doubt flickered. Had I? The sound of Sienna's suitcase wheels scraping across the hardwood floor echoed through the house. It was 9:15 p.m. Connor stood at the top of the stairs while his wife packed 3 years of marriage into 2 bags. I heard drawers slamming, angry footsteps. She was taking her time, maybe hoping Connor would crack, would tell her to stop. He didn't. When she finally came down the stairs, she looked nothing like the polished woman from that first dinner. Hair in a messy ponytail, face blotchy and streaked. She dragged both suitcases behind her, refusing to look at either of us. At the door, she paused. "Connor, I need money for a hotel." He pulled out his wallet slowly and handed her 3 20s. $60. She stared at the money like it was an insult. $60? After 3 years? "You have access to the joint account," Connor said quietly. "There's about $800 in there. Take what you need." Her laugh was bitter. "What I need is for you to wake up and realize what you're throwing away." She grabbed the doorknob, yanked it open. Cool night air rushed in. Then she turned back one last time, looking at Connor. "You're going to regret this. When you're 40 and alone, you'll realize your father made you choose money over love." "No," Connor said. "You made me choose between you and my family, and you made it easy." The door clicked shut. Seconds later, her BMW started up and pulled away. The silence that filled the house was complete. Connor stood frozen, staring at the closed door. Then his shoulders started to shake. He sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, face in his hands, and the sobs came, deep and wrenching. I sat beside him, my 63-year-old body folded around my 35-year-old son, and I held him while he broke apart. "I'm so stupid," he choked out. "How did I not see it?" "You loved her," I said simply. "Love makes us see what we want to see. 3 years wasted. Not wasted. You learned something. About people. About yourself. That's not waste, son. That's life." He pulled back, wiping his eyes. "She said something before she left, about you making my worth about money. Was she right? Did I only matter to you because of what I'd inherit?" The question I'd been dreading. I took a breath. "I don't know if I made you feel that way. I hope not. But I can't pretend I didn't make mistakes. Maybe I was so focused on protecting the money that I made you think the money was what needed protecting. Instead of you, the person." "But the notebook," Connor said. "She had me listed like a stock portfolio. Salary, 401k, house value, like I was just assets." "And that's how you know the difference," I said. "Your mother's trust wasn't about controlling your life. It was about making sure your life couldn't be controlled by someone like Sienna. There's a difference between protection and possession." "Is there?" "Yes. Because I'm giving you the choice. The trust, the house, all of it. It's yours. Today, if you want it. Tomorrow. 5 years from now. I don't need to be dead for you to have control. I was just waiting for you to be ready." Connor looked at me. "And you think I'm ready now?" "I think you just proved you are." We sat there on the stairs for a long time. Finally, Connor spoke again. "Can I see it? The letter Mom wrote?" I led him to the basement, punched in 2322758. The lock clicked open. The basement wasn't finished. Concrete floor, exposed beams, but organized meticulously. Filing cabinets lined one wall. But what drew Connor's attention was the other side. Shelves holding photo albums, boxes of Kathy's belongings, her jewelry, her painting supplies. "You kept everything," he said, voice thick. I couldn't let go. This was my space to remember her. He opened one of the filing cabinets. In the very front was a manila envelope with his name on it. He pulled out the letter, hands trembling. I watched him read Kathy's words she'd written 2 weeks before she died. When he finished, tears were streaming down his face. She knew, he said. Even then, she knew I'd need protection. Your mother understood the world, the good and the bad, and she loved you enough to prepare for both. He folded the letter carefully. There's a line in here I keep reading. She wrote, "Real love doesn't demand access to bank accounts or property deeds. Real love is built in small moments, in shared struggles, in choosing each other even when it's hard." She was a wise woman. She was right. Sienna never chose me when it was hard. She chose me when she thought it would be easy. And 6 months later, Connor came for Sunday dinner like he did every week now. "I met someone," he said, cutting into the chicken. "Diane. She's an oncology nurse. We met at the cancer research fundraiser." He smiled, a real smile. She paid for her own coffee, insisted on it. Smart woman. "We've been talking about the trust," he continued. "I want to set up the Catherine Mitchell Memorial Scholarship for kids who lose a parent to cancer. Keep enough for the house and a safety net. Use the rest to help others." I felt my throat tighten. Your mother would love that. After dinner, we moved to the garage. The '67 Chevy pickup was finally coming together. "Hand me the socket wrench," Connor said. I watched him work, capable, confident, free. "You know what Sienna got wrong?" he said. "She thought the house, the money, the trust. She thought that was the inheritance. But that's not what Mom left me." No. She left me you. Someone who'd protect me even when I hated him for it. Someone who'd wait for me to see the truth instead of forcing it. That's the real inheritance. Later, I stood alone in the living room, Kathy's photo on the mantel, her smile as bright as the day I'd taken it. "We did it," I told her quietly. "He's okay." Peace. Not just the absence of conflict, the presence of something earned,